Hi, welcome to Adventures in IT, and today we're going to tackle a Raspberry Pi. If I'm assuming if you're looking at my video that you're new to Raspberry Pi and you just want to get started with it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it from that perspective. First of all, this is a Raspberry Pi 2 without a case. I do have a case for it, but this is what it would be if you purchased it, just the Raspberry Pi 2. There's a Model 3, a Model 4, there's the original model, there's a Pi Zero, there's a Raspberry Pi 400, which is actually a complete computer. Have one here to show you. It's quite nice, actually. Has all the interfaces on the back. But again, today we just want to get started with the Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to use this Raspberry Pi 2. You're going to need a micro SD card. I'm going to go with a 16 gig. I think they recommend about a 4 gig, but we'll find out together. Also, I'll go a little bit. I can show you a little bit about this. It has USB ports, as you can see here. It has an Ethernet port. The newer models, the Model 3, I think, and the Model 4 for sure, has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in. You can easily add it to one of these, however, with just a USB dongle. And there's various other things like an interface cable for a camera and a display, but it uses a standard HDMI port, which is here. There's also an audio port if you don't want to pull the audio off the HDMI, a standard USB, micro USB, power input, so you can use most Android cell phone chargers to power this. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So it is a computer, it's a very small computer, but there's a lot of power packed into these, so let's get started. What you're going to want to do is get on a Windows PC or a Mac. We're going to use Windows 10. I already have Chrome up, and I'm going to go to raspberrypi.org. All right, once you're there, click on Software. And for today's purposes, we're going to go to Raspberry Pi OS. And I'm just going to show you this real quick. These are some options. If you scroll down, there's other options. There's also third-party stuff. Here is RetroPie. This is a famous build, and perhaps we'll have another video to talk about that. But I'm going to go all the way back up to the top and select Raspberry Pi Imager. This is probably the easiest way to do this. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to download and install it. And as you can see, they have a Windows installer, a Mac OS, or an Ubuntu, various other things. They also have the apt install. If you're into Linux, you can do it through a terminal. Now, I have already downloaded and installed this, so I'm going to click on Start and run the Raspberry Pi Imager. And I'm going to bring it over here so you can see it, and it's going to walk you through it. So as you can see here, we have Choose OS, so I'm going to click that, and you get a bunch of options. We're going to go with the recommended here. There's a lot of other things here that will run on it. Okay, so you have media players, emulations. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. But if you scroll on down, you'll notice there's an erase format card for FAT32. I believe we're going to do that first, and I just want to make sure the card is ready. So I have my micro SD, as you can see. So I have inserted it in this little card reader. You can also do a SD adapter, and if you have that port as well, but I'm just going to use this. These are very inexpensive, and usually if you buy a Raspberry Pi, it comes with an adapter like this. So just stick it in the USB port. You can tell my computer was happy about that. And now we're going to go over here and we're going to say erase and choose storage is next. There's my mass storage device. That is my D drive. It is 16 gigs. So I hit that, and now I hit write. All existing will be erased. Are you sure? And we are. So here we go. It is now erasing my SD card. Error running FAT32 format. Ooh, that's not good. I wonder what happened there. I may have a bad card, and that is very, very possible. So you may run into that. I'm glad we ran into it. I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to go search for another card or see if I can figure out what's up with this one. Okay, so it looks like I had a bad SD card. So I found an 8 gig. Probably not exactly what I want, but we'll try to go with that instead. And what I'm doing now is loading up the Raspberry Pi app again. So we'll switch over there and look at that. Choose OS. I'm going to scroll down to erase. Choose storage. DE 8 gig. Right. Yes. And it looks like we might be in business this time. You can now remove it. It has been erased. So I'm going to hit OK there and remove the card. And go ahead and close the application. I'm going to run it again. And bring it back over here. Now I'm going to plug the card back into the computer. And we're going to go to Choose OS. Now we're going to go with this one here, Raspberry Pi OS 32-bit, recommended. All right. Now choose storage. We're going to go with the 8 gig storage, and we're going to click right. Are you sure? Yes. And now what it's going to do is download the software and write it to the card at the same time. And this is the easiest way to do this. Now, if you want to do it the other way, you can actually download the package standalone and do it yourself. But you have to have software to image that to the card. The good news is that software is all over the internet and it's free. And there's a ton of tutorials on Raspberry Pi's website that can get you going with that. So it's not too bad at all to do it that way. And if we go back and check our progress, we're already at 10%. So this is going pretty good. Some of the other, and I'm going to bring this up, if you go back and actually download this as 2.8 gigabytes, as you can see, it probably comes with more software. I'm pretty sure it does. And the software it comes with is just phenomenal. You should check that out. And maybe once we get this going, I mean, we'll fire it up and see what the standard build comes with. And if I think there's some other things worth showing you on the other build, we'll most certainly do that as well. So let's see, where's our progress again? It is over here somewhere, 17%. So we'll fast forward through this and take it from there. Okay, after it verifies the download, you should get this message right here. You can now remove from the reader. So we're going to close that and do just that, remove it from the reader. And here's our SD card, Raspberry Pi 2. Now you'll notice this goes in labeled down, all right, on the underside. So you can... I'm going to try to get it lined up. Okay, there you go. Be very careful. These are prone to snap in half. I've seen it happen a lot. And as you know, probably, that these cards can be more expensive than the Raspberry Pi. So when you push it in, it should click. And now it's engaged. So it's ready to boot at this point. So the next thing you're going to want to do is hook it to a video source. You can put a keyboard and mouse in your USB ports. You may want to go ahead and hook an Ethernet cable up to the network if you don't have a wireless dongle. And then, once all that's done, then connect the power. Once you do all that, it should boot up. So we're going to, I'm going to set this up so we can both look at this at the same time. And hopefully we'll have a computer working off of this little guy. Okay, now the moment of truth. I have a new capture device hooked up, so hopefully, if everything's working, you will see this. All right, here we go. I got it all hooked up. I got a mouse, a keyboard, networking, Ethernet rather, and the video, which is going through a capture device. And now, here's the power. All right, the power's in. You see we have lights, and I'm going to switch over to the feed. And this screen right here shows me that it is working. That color block comes up when you first power the thing on. So let's see what happens. Okay, this is resizing the file system. Basically what that means is that it created about a 2 gig partition maybe when it was initially installed, and it detected that the card was larger than that. so it automatically resized itself. So it takes up the full amount of space on the SD card. So now it reboots, and looky here, we have a welcome to the Raspberry Pi desktop. All right, now let me hook up one more cable that I forgot because it wasn't on my monitor. And as you can see, just like with any computer that you boot up for the first time, it's going to have to go through some gyrations, and it might take just a bit to get where it's going. So that's what's happening right now. It's doing the initial boot. You haven't missed anything. All right, I'm going back to the feed. It looks like we have wallpaper. And let me move the mouse on that machine. It says, welcome to Raspberry Pi Desktop. And it gives my IP address. So it grabbed an IP. You hit next here. It wants to know what country we're in. As you can see, it defaults to the United Kingdom. That's because guess where this thing is from? The Raspberry Pi is a UK product. So we're going to do American English, and then we get to pick a time zone. For me, that's going to be, I don't know, Indianapolis would probably work because they're Eastern Standard now. New York's usually what I go to because that's obviously where it is. You use a US keyboard. That sounds great to me. Use the English language. Next. I mean, it's easy. And as you can see, we have a working computer. It's going through its gyrations now to set it all up. So back so we don't miss anything. You'll notice there's a border around the screen, that black border. I'm seeing that on my monitor as well. These things like televisions, from my experience, and usually if you hook them to a television, high def TV, that border won't be there. You can fix that. There are ways to tinker with it to get it done. We may cover that in another video at some point. So. As you can see now, we're in. It wants to do a new password. The default Pi user account has a password Raspberry. For now, I'm just going to leave it. Now, this screen shows a black border around the desktop. Looks like we're going to go ahead and do this. So I'll hit next on that. It's also going to check for updates because, updates. At least it's not as annoying as Windows 10. So it's going through its little setup here. And I'll explain a little bit about this. This is a Linux-based device. And, of course, the desktop you're seeing, or was seeing, you're seeing now, that is the GUI, the GUI, Graphic User Interface. This is just one of many. They have a lot out there for the Raspberry Pi. Because it's based on Linux, Linux is a very popular operating system. So there's lots out there for it. So the internet's chocked full of tutorials and how-to guides on how to navigate around a Raspberry Pi or any Linux-based operating system for that matter. So as you can see, it's going to download some updates. We'll just let that continue on and maybe catch you back here in just a little bit to just kind of take a look around and see what we've done. Okay, we have a new screen. It is finally there. Let's see if we can get it up here. System is up to date. I'm going to mouse over, going to hit OK. All right, set up and ready to go. Let's do a reboot. So restarting the Raspberry Pi. Did it take? I think it did. Yeah, it took. And so we're doing a reboot. I'll just leave this screen up. Okay, that's my capture card saying it doesn't have. Okay, now that's from the Raspberry Pi, meaning it's booting up. And here we go. Welcome to the desktop, 32-bit. I do not know if they have a 64-bit version of this for their 64-bit Pis. I would imagine they do. I think my 400's like that, but it was pre-installed. So still waiting on the, there we go. Got a desktop, got the menu bar, and yeah, there we go. So I'm sure there's sound. I do not have speakers hooked up. As you can see, it's set to HDMI. You can change it to audio video jack, which, by the way, that jack does put out composite video if I remember correctly. But let's take a look at the menu. you know, with most operating systems, they have a logo there for that. They have a programming thing. You can actually do some Python programming in here. There's a Chromium web browser, VLC media player. There's an image viewer. Here's some accessories that are included. Text editor. Debian reference. Debian is the flavor of Linux that's running on this. As you can see, there's some other settings. Also, I don't know if you notice, our black border is gone, so it did take care of that for us. So yeah, there you go. We can bring up a web browser. And again, this is the Raspberry Pi 2. It's not exactly a speed demon, but normally when you build projects, which is what you use these guys for, you don't need a lot of horsepower to do it. I do know that the Raspberry Pi 2 will run RetroPie just fine. RetroPie being the game emulator where you can play things like old Nintendo games, old Atari games, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, our browser is finally loaded. It's going to raspberrypi.org, where we started out over on the PC. I'm going to type in, let's see. Let's go to my company's website and look at the webcam there on the building, just to give it a little test. Okay, so the company website's up. I'm going to go to Jefferson Cam. Going to scroll down a little bit here. And there's our YouTube video window. And the live stream is loading. Again, not the fastest thing to ever hit the market. If you'll notice up in the right-hand corner, they've preloaded some things on this Chromium, including looks like a uBlock or an ad blocker. So that's pretty cool. Some things that you normally have to add on your own. Wow. Again, not exactly a speed demon, but the Raspberry Pi 2 is quite old. They're up to on the Model 4 now, or the version 4. So there we go. Oh, we finally got some live video. And this is obviously not great resolution. I'm sure it's running it at 240, and of course that's probably because of the graphics processor in the Raspberry Pi itself. But we have accomplished what we set out to do, and that was to successfully set up and configure a Raspberry Pi and get it to where it's usable. So it is now set up as a basic computer. There are so many things you can do with these guys. I mentioned like the game emulator, but also you'll notice these rows of pins here. These are called GPIO, I think. Let me make sure I'm getting that right. Yeah, GPIO, input output, and each pin does a various thing. And if you're really good at wiring, you can get the pin outs for this, the schematics, and you can write programs to interact with it. So you can do all kinds of fun things like soundboards, and I've seen so many things you can do with these. They're just amazing. You can do monitoring of all sorts. You can hook up humidity monitors, temperature sensors. They are just incredible, and the sky's the limit. I've seen people buy these and put them inside of other projects and have them do special purposes, remote control lawnmowers, all kinds of crazy things. So share with us in the comments, what do you do with a Raspberry Pi, or what would you like to do? Also, please like this channel, subscribe if you could. It would really help me out. I want to get this going. I really think there's a lot of adventures to be had in IT, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Thanks for hanging out with me. And again, get you a Raspberry Pi. They are wonderful machines. We'll catch you later. Thanks again for hanging out.